goodness. Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube in a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And yes, as usual, I am running a couple of minutes late. It has been a busy day for me in doing some listing. I'm down to maybe 3 items and I've got it all done. Yesterday, I answered, I would have to say, at least 100 messages, right? In a what was it that I sold? Sun tanning lotion of all things. And I had 4 bottles. I didn't ask very much for it, $35. But my messenger just did not stop. I finally got the last bottle off this morning. And I was actually selling them for my brother in law. And he was super happy and super surprised because he got a traffic ticket for parking on the streets in the winter. You're not supposed to do that, right? These are snow routes, and we have to keep the streets clear so that when these trucks, we were talking about all these trucks, the snow plows and the zambonis and the sidewalk clears and those big trucks, dump trucks that pick up the piles of snow and take them out of the city. Well, he parked on the street and he got a ticket. He was lucky he just got a ticket because on the norm, right? The towing companies are behind these trucks too, because it's an opportunity for the towing companies, to make a big scoop and money because everybody parks on the streets and it's not cheap when you get a ticket. Yay, maybe it's only $150 for a parking ticket, but the thing is you have to take a cab, and the what do you call that, the lot where they tow the cars, it's like way far away. You have to take a cab. They make you wait because they got lots of other people standing in line waiting to argue about a ticket they got. And then, it's frustrating when you have an extra bill that you didn't, right? You didn't anticipate. So he was really happy today when I messaged him and I transferred some money to him, and he was super happy. And I was super happy too, because I was able to go to the drugstore and get vitamins, right? And if you guys haven't hung out with me for any length of time, you guys know I'm kind of adamant about my vitamins and minerals. I have lots of them. I formulate them for how I'm feeling, where I feel deficient sometimes. I also take the vitamins in different seasons of the year. In the winter time, I'm all about the D3 and the vitamin C, because we're not spending as much time outside getting the nutrients from the sun. And yes, the nutrients, right, the sun does produce nutrients for us. But sometimes it's not sufficient. And sometimes, I get insights. It's in that experimentation of trying things to see if it's going to make us feel better. What was that saying my sister says all the time? Don't fix what's not broke, right? And I never really feel ill. I don't feel out of energy. I don't feel lazy. I don't feel achy, right? And I've really never been that person. I've never had a bleeding nose. I've never ever had a headache in my entire life. It has been times when I've said, "You're giving me a headache," but really you're not getting on giving me a headache. You're getting on my nerves, right? But yeah, so I was happy. I trying something new, and we're going to see if adds to my life in any way, right? But it is in that experimentation. But at the same time, you got to remember, if somebody says, go jump off the bridge, right? Are you going to go jump off the bridge? Each one of us has to feel things out. And it's in our decisions whether or not to try new things. But you never know what will hit. You never know what's going to impact your life in a way that you never thought possible. And I think for a lot of my experimentation and a lot of my willingness to listen in on other people's perspectives and feel out these perspectives, right? Because it's not just in our immediate vicinity that the insights are true. I do believe that whoever, whatever, has kind of divvied it out across the world, right? And this is why there are so many different religious ideas and spiritual ideas. It's in that diversity because whoever or whatever really wants to get us to the point where, right, we are properly connecting with each other. And it's when we properly connect each other, and it is when we're willing to sit in on different experiences and have different adventures that we get to learn new things, right? And it doesn't mean that it's true because, again, if somebody said, go jump off a bridge, would you? No, you have to feel it out for yourself, right? And this is what I do with my vitamins when it comes to, the seasons are changing. What do I need? I'm not feeling good. I got the sniffles, or I can't drag myself out of bed, like these things. And then you go and search out, right? Because if something's not working for you in the moment, right, that's the perfect opportunity to try something new, right? I am not a stranger to that. I have been a participant, both willing and unwilling, in change, because as children, as teenagers, quite often, we don't get a say in the change that comes into our lives, right? It's in our guardianship, it's in the parenting, it's in those ones who have the authority within the household or within the system, if you're talking about school or doctors' offices or community projects or community classes, I guess, community classes. It was something I really, really loved because, for the most part, growing up for myself, I didn't want to be at home, right? Unless my dad was at home, I felt targeted, right? It was better to be out of the picture, right? My mother, in all honesty, didn't even care if I came home at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But if I was home after dinner, I was in bed by 7 o'clock at night, even in my senior years in high school, right? It was, right. Children are not to be seen and not to be heard. And I grew up with that truth, right? But we have to remember sometimes we have these ideas that are just passed down from one generation to another until they become truths, right? Until we get to grow up and make our own decisions, our own choices, and bring change into our lives, be willing to have change come into our lives, or, right, to get away from our old lives altogether, right? Change is, it's amazing. It really is. I'm not uncomfortable with it. I know lots of people are uncomfortable with environments that they're not familiar with people that they're not familiar with, but I always found that I benefited, right? I was that kid nobody wanted to be around, that nobody wanted to see, nobody wanted to hear, nobody wanted, right? Nobody wanted to be near me, right? And if they were near me, well, you know how the world is sometimes, right? And we didn't have bullying campaigns like we do have now in the school systems, right? It was kind of it was kind of crazy town growing up. We'll just put it at that for now, right? These are not conversations that are out of bound, right? But they are conversations that need to be tiptoed into, right? I won't want to wake up tomorrow morning with a dream that I would have to analyze for myself. Yeah, that was pretty wild yesterday when I woke up. I'm not a big dreamer, and I happened to have a dream and it turned into a big deal. Not just a big deal, it turned into a big lesson for me. And it's something that I was still chewing on today in that contemplation and being willing, because it wasn't a dream that I wanted to take into consideration. It wasn't something I wanted to dwell on, but I felt I really needed to. So you give it that time in our choices and in that experimentation to see, because unless you move towards it, there's zero chance of answers or resolution or advancement or sometimes happiness. Because when we don't want to change, when we don't want to be in environments that we're not familiar with, we stay in environments that we are familiar with. And if you're anything like me, right, growing up, we really did not want to be in the environments. And that's not truly true, right? I was very codependent on my father, but my father would go away for months at a time. He was a commercial fisherman. And when he was home, he worked the night shift. He ran cabs, right? So we'd only have a little bit of time with him at dinner on his days off. Sometimes when he'd come home from trips, he'd want to go to Reno or Vegas and he'd pile us all in the car and we go on. But this is all change, right? These are all surprises. And, after a while, we got familiar with that, comfortable with that. So then when you expand into new environments, like when I was 18 and, right, decided to move to Manitoba from British Columbia with my family as an 18-year-old. That's how what reliant I was. That was how insecure and not very confident. But that's the programming, right? That's the way I was brought up. And, whether it was with intent that I was gonna, right? just do these. You guys know what I mean, right? That a lot of it was in my acceptance. At 18, I was an adult. Since the day I turned 12 years old, every single day I heard that phrase. I can't wait until you're 18 and you're so out of my house, right? I just had to be grateful that I had food on the table, right? Or a roof over my head. Be grateful for that. And I was, because those were my insecurities, right? Above anything, I would go through any kind of experience, any kind of change, because survival, basic survival needs, right? They have to be maintained. And when you don't feel that you're taken care of, right? When you don't feel that you're being watched over, like I said, my mother didn't care if I came home at 2 o'clock. She just didn't care. Out of sight, out of mind. And she would feel so much better for that. And in all honesty, right, I felt better to be able to go off and to adventure. But why I was saying that is because in those adventures, I'm experimenting, I'm experiencing, right? They are adventures, and those are change, and those were things that I was able to dictate for myself when I was away from the house. If I was in the house, well, every move was dictated or it was being very closely paid attention to. And not just for me, because, I was the oldest child. So I was doing the same thing for my sisters, right? Okay, so we're gonna just grab the cards. I'm not sure if that's relevant for anything, but I was talking about change and to be willing to experiment and to add things into our lives, to be at the very least sometimes we don't have to search out that change. If you're anything like me, change finds us. And so sometimes it's just willing to move with what is trying to get you to move, right? To say, yes, okay, I don't want to, but I'll try it. Or, I just have to, right? And so we make these decisions and then we find that possibly they might have been the best decisions we ever made. And it just seemed so easy. It was just something that we walked into because we were willing to look at a different landscape, a different perspective, right? That we were able to feel something out to see if it fit us, suited us, right? If we enjoyed it, if it was fun. Most of the time in the beginning, it's super scary. Hello, Eugene. I know you're there. Thank you so much. And thank you for the thumbs up. Much appreciated. You know, Lots of times, we are scared. We don't want to make those moves. We don't want that change, but you have to go with the flow, right? If something crazy town happened to the world, are you just going to sit here and wait for the end of the world, right? The grocery stores have been looted. People are running up and down the streets, taking people's positions, and you're just so scared that you're just sitting there waiting for it to happen. And that's no way to exist, right? In our evolution, right? That change is ever present from second to second, moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, year to year, lifetime to lifetime. It's supposed to be a growth. It's supposed to be something that helps us to move towards a destination. And whether or not we know what that destination is, and I don't believe, right, that in this moment that is truly going to be revealed to us, but it will in baby steps, in those small moments when whoever whatever feels that we are ready for it, or the world is ready for it, or if it's a necessity, right? Because if it's a necessity, you'll move whether you're comfortable, scared, hungry, right? It doesn't matter. When it's survival time, you do what's necessary. But if you don't have new experiences, right? And technically, experiences, they call it experience because you're gaining experience, right? And necessarily, we don't ever going to use it. But lots of times, just having that knowledge so that when crazy town does happen, you go, oh my goodness, give me the slingshot. I know how to shoot a slingshot. Or, oh my goodness, there's a piece of flint. I know how to make fire, right? Just an example. I don't feel like anything like that is happening. But if it did, would you be ready? Would you know what to do? I have a survival bucket going on. It's got everything, including snow pants and jackets, gloves, axes, cookware, bug spray, two slingshots. I have a bow and arrow. I have a jigsaw, like these things, toques. And you think, and yes, it's a big bucket, but I got a dolly. Even if I have to walk, I'll just slap it on the dolly. It won't even feel like waiting anyway. And if it's an emergency and I have to move fast, it's not like, oh my goodness, because in those panic modes, you know how our brains go. You're not going, oh my goodness, what do I take? And, you're taking your bathing suit, you're taking a couple of pairs of socks and your lipstick, maybe a fork and a knife, and off you go. And then the next thing you know, like today, you guys, minus 48 Celsius with the wind chill. Minus 48. I have not seen a minus 48. Oh my goodness. It's got to be a couple of decades now. And it's going to be like this for, I think, 3 or 4 days. It's going to be really cold. And I don't even have to say what minus 48 is in Fahrenheit, because once you get to minus 40, right? Imperial and metric are exactly the same when it comes to temperature. So minus 48, Eugene. How warm was it where you are today? Right? Let me know in the comments there how nice it is, right? Maybe you're super cold too. But I think right now we're probably the coldest going on in Canada. I do understand that probably Ontario's got some pretty wicked snowstorms going on, but I don't think they have the temperatures that we have. And I did go out today, and I'm so glad I put my sunglasses over my reading glasses, because within 2 minutes, and I'm not even joking, I had that thick of frost, like ice frost, over my lenses of my sunglasses. Just take my nail and scrape it a little bit, just so I had a hole, just so I could see the sidewalk, so I wouldn't slip on the ice or trip over a big block of whatever the snow plows piled up. And then I was so happy because when I got into the store, I was like, oh my goodness, I was like a snowman. And everybody was, right? All bundled up. But when you walked in the store, I instantly became a sauna. I dressed for it, you guys. I think I had a winter vest on, my winter jacket on. I had a sweater on underneath everything. I had snow pants. I had my jacket. I had toque with my ears covered. I had two scarves. And then I took my heavy duty gloves, not my just little light ones, right? My heavy duty gloves. And I walked, and I swear I was frozen by the time I got to the end of the block. But when I got into the store, I turned instantly into a sauna in the clothes that I was wearing. But I was so happy when I took my sunglasses off, and my eyeglasses were perfectly clear. Otherwise, right, when I go to the vitamin section, I wouldn't have been able to read anything. I could barely, it just like it was a big block of ice covering my sunglasses, but everything was cleared up as soon as I took my sunglasses off. My eyeglasses were great, but it was still very, very hot. And then I had to go over to the grocery store, which was just across the way. And I walked into the grocery store, but I didn't know what I wanted. I wanted to eat a little bit proper, but at the same time, I wanted the junk food. What I really wanted was the pot stickers. Oh my goodness. I tried pot stickers for the first time in my life this week, and I loved them. Like, I thought oh my goodness, when I make Chinese food every once in a while. It's American style Chinese food. I make the bread and veal, and I make the fried rice, and I make the noodles and the plum sauce and the sweet and sour sauce, and egg rolls. I'll do all that, but it never crosses my mind, to try real Chinese food, right? Not since my experiences with Chinese food in a fancy restaurant, and it was octopus, squid, and sushi, and it was, oh my goodness, it was expensive, and it was awful. And since then, and I was probably only about 16 years old, and then since then I almost completely avoid it unless it's American Chinese food. I'm not interested. As close as I got to the stock or what do you got, pot stickers, was the wonton soup. And that's about as close as I would get to touching real Chinese food. Sometimes the green tea. I like the green tea on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion. And talking about the tea, let's have a sip of mine. Mm. It's my last coffee of the night, and I always use my big Tim Hortons travel mugs. These are the ones I take on my trip because they fit in my coffee cup holder in my car. And they're so amazing at keeping your drinks hot, especially when you're getting distracted. And I like a nice hot cup of coffee. Once it goes lukewarm, I'm not interested in it anymore. And that's kind of wasteful sometimes, right? So yeah, I like my big mugs. Okay, yesterday we had the word community. I don't know how many times, even just recently, I have pulled that word. If I pull that word tonight, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'll do, but it will put me in a state that I'll know that there is a conversation with myself that I need to have, or be willing to be introduced to a different perspective, a different idea. I truly believe that, right, something's trying to get through this, but I'm just not getting it. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this by myself. I suspect, right? I am a very social person. I love people. I wouldn't be here in this moment if I didn't love people. And I suspect, for my own joy and my own happiness, possibly whoever or whatever, right, needs to be, or needs me to be in a community. But in the moment, right, even though I am willing, and I have, right, um, I am so attached to dynamics. I'm so attached to, well, this idea it takes all kinds to make the world, right? I'm non denominational. So when I look at communities, my communities, right, should be non denominational. And if they're not non denominational, they have to be tolerance. There has, right? Sometimes that's where it starts, is just in tolerance, and then it moves into something that's acceptable, and then sometimes it moves into, oh my goodness, you're my best friend, or you're the most amazing person I ever met, or somebody coming up to you and say, can I ask you something? I really need some advice in that. And then you think, oh my goodness, nobody in my entire life has ever asked for my advice, right? Never wanted my opinion, expected me not even to be seen or to be heard. And yet, right? Because I believe that it takes all kinds to make the world. that I have been able to create some of the most amazing relationships for me, possibly not for everybody, but I don't judge people in all honesty. Like, unless you're truly abusing somebody, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, I'm not going to have a problem with you. As long as I don't see it, as long as I can't say not know that you're doing that because quite a few times I've had good relationships with people that had values that might not have been the same as mine. And, we're friends with them anyway. We love them anyway because whatever they bring into our life has impacted us more than how it's caused us problems, how it's hurt us, right? Sometimes it's just that idea that, we have people in our lives that won't betray us, right? And so I do believe it takes all kinds to make the world, but we're not always, right? We're far from being tolerant of each other, but it is better, isn't it? Right? There are a prime example is the people up north. We're talking in Nunavik, in Alaska, right? That they don't appreciate being called Eskimos, right? They want to be called Inuit. And they have every right, to be called that because if Eskimo was not something that they referred to themselves as. It was the intolerance. It was the way other people perceived them and thought of them. And the word Eskimo actually means humans that eat raw fish. Oh no, sorry, not humans. People who eat raw fish. Right? And that wasn't something that they referred to themselves as. It was the outsiders. Now, in proper etiquette, and it is, right? It is in the tolerances that people have different ways of living, different ways of being, but it doesn't make them less kinder, less smart, different, right? I would have no idea how to hunt seals or whales or how to get across terrain that's just pure white. I would know how to make I would know how to make the snow glasses with the slits, right? To protect or slits to make sure that we don't damage our eyes from snow blindness, right? But without connecting and without associating with ourselves with people with different skills, different ideas, different skin color, different traditions, different cultures in general, different religious ideas, how would I ever? Well, I'm going to do my own example. How would I have ever understood about reincarnation? So they call it reincarnation. Cindy, I believe, is not coming back, right? But those other parts of me are, right? I believe that wholly. But unless, and I believe that wholly, but unless I had made a connection with somebody with that perspective, or if I had made the choice to listen to somebody, be willing to sit with an idea that I had never heard before and let it seep in me and let me make the choice. Let me have the revelation and the feeling as to if it's true or not, right? There is so much we miss because we're not willing to create change in our lives, that we're not willing to have experience. For myself, growing up, I had lots of experiences just out of that need of having to stay out of my house, right? Except when my dad came home from his trips. And then at that point, I was totally codependent and definitely totally dependent on my dad. And I loved being around my dad, and my dad loved being around me. And that was pretty much the relationship, the only great relationship that I had in my childhood. Sometimes out of necessity, because we were kind of an isolated family, right? We'd have neighbors and stuff, but we didn't really associate the way people do today, where they have like 10 or 20 friends. I might have had one friend for the most part, right? My sister Tracy was my friend, and she was so different from me. And I learned lots from my sister Tracy, and my sister learned lots from me too. And in the end, as an adult, after my father passed away, I really attached myself to my sister Tracy, who became the matriarch of our family, because, my mother, when my father died, her other parts of her just said, "See you later," and they were gone, and they just left my mother in a state for the rest of her life, right? And I would like to think that that would never ever ever happen with me, that no matter what, those other parts of me are with me for life, right? Maybe they can go a few minutes before I go, right? Only because I wouldn't want them to have that experience of, right? At that point, move on, right? Find a new space, find a new life that you can influence in a good way, right? A way that you have a little bit more understanding, that possibly, right, you'll be able to get through and be able to make a little bit of movement, right, in the next life and in every life going forward, instead of being in a standstill, and instead of living the life of your dad and your granddad and your great granddad, because epigenetically all that poo poo is just kind of passed down from one generation, that at some point, and hopefully in this life, we can make. I know we've made a lot of progress, right? I can't imagine that those other parts of me will ever, ever get stuck in that narcissistic, right? Codependent situation again, because it is really, really damaging, right? But we make that movement, and maybe in that movement, that understanding of what we did to ourselves, in that understanding that it's found out now, right? That it's just passed down, just cannibalizing each other. And right, going forward, my sisters, my nieces, my nephews, and my great nieces and nephews, right? That they won't find themselves in that situation, and right, maybe they'll make some amazing movement going forward, right? And then I'll just pop up where I have no idea, right? I have no idea where that spot where I'll be sitting in the next life is, because again, we're not privy to every answer. For the most part, we make those answers up for ourselves, right? I believe that there is so much, even in this moment, when we look back at those past, even in this idea of Christianity, even they're changing. They're more tolerant. They start with tolerance, and then things get to be a little bit more acceptable, a little bit softer, a little bit more understanding in where they got things wrong, course correct, make right their wrongs, right? And carry on. I think in this digital age that we live in right now, ignorance is no excuse. And I think, right, we are not going to get away with too much, because that destination, even though we don't know where it is, or even if we don't know, even if there is one, I believe, right, there is a grand destination, and those course corrections, because we get to make choices, right? We get to bring change into our lives, and sometimes the way things happened are not the way things should have happened, right? And we adapt, we conquer, and we work with what we got, and just do the best that we can and hope that it will land in the right place, right? Okay, we're just going to leave it at that. Holy moly moly. it has been a week. It has been a week. But these are really, when I'm busy, when I'm listing and doing things on my own, these are things that I can have conversations with myself, that sometimes, even in having content in the background, and listening to it, and doing my work and not being interrupted, and being with myself, that I can even, right, siphon through all of that and be able to come out of it different, even within a few hours. And that's a truth. And I would much rather do it that way, in the baby steps, than have those 180s in my life, or those 360-degree yanks that get us right back at the start, where we have to start over. But even when we start over, we always pick up things along the way. So even if we're starting over, that process of getting to where you left off will be faster. It will be easier, because some of those lessons seeped in. Maybe not all of them, because you found yourself in the beginning again, or you found yourself on the other end, which is the 180, right? I'd much rather have those little 45-degree turns, right? They're more accommodating. They're definitely more comfortable. And sometimes you don't even notice the change happens. You just wake up, and, right? And there's a new understanding, right? And tolerance is something that is the starting point, right? The starting point. And then we move to accepting, and then we move to, right, that baseline of understandings, and understand that it takes all kinds to make the world. And I think once we're truly at that point, there won't be any need for any lessons, because we'll just be waking up to them instantly, right? Because we did the work already. Okay, you guys, let's pull a card. I'm only laughing because of the cards that I pull consistently, and it just kind of makes me wonder whether or not it's going to happen again. And I right, and I know if it doesn't, because I was almost optimistic that we had gotten past that point where that word community was popping up, but it popped up again yesterday. Let's see what word we get tonight. I'm ready for a new word, you guys. I'm ready for a new word, but something that's relevant to the moment, right? Sometimes it is a course correction, right? Because none of us always gets it right. And because I so much and because I listen so much and I feel things out, I have some some ideas, some feelings, some truths for myself, but whether or not they're really true, I don't know. But as long as I'm not getting those 360s and 180s, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm on I'm on mark in some way. And sometimes that's just got to be good enough. Okay, here we go. See, I'm even going to turn my head around because it's just like, if I keep pulling that card, you guys going to think like I'm some kind of magician or something and I'm playing a trick, right? Okay, here's the word. Oh, you guys, we got a good one tonight, right? We got the word gratefulness. Gratefulness is the expression of appreciation in acknowledgement of what we receive, right? What we receive. We don't always get what we want. We don't. We get a little something and then we just want it bigger, right? We just want it bigger and we want more of it, right? Or it's something that we it's something that we take for granted. It's like the babies being born, and right off the hop, they want their Google Pixels, right? They want their Google Pixels. Saying that now, I used to say they wanted their iPhones. I've never gone with Apple. I've always been a Google girl, and as soon as they had the pixels, I was on them, and I really appreciate my phone. I will always be a pixel girl. I love their cameras. I love the speakers on those phones, and I love having access to everything and knowing that my phone is safe, it's secure, that it's being taken care of, and I feel taken care of a little bit of that codependency dependency on my AI. And I think at this point in time, I think we all are a little bit, isn't it? Right? But it's appreciating what you have in the moment, right? I don't have that RV. I am not taking off on road trips constantly what I want to do, right? I have goals, I have dreams, but I make those small steps towards them, knowing that at the very least, I understand that I'm moving towards that. There are lots of people who have goals and dreams and wishes, but they don't make any movement. They just sit there and they wait for it to come to them, right? And yes, sometimes in just waiting for it and just having faith that possibly lots of times it does come to you. But that's not the way that I grew up, right? And in the evidence of my own life and on how much I've been able to accomplish in say the past half a dozen years, that I am confident in that movement that I am trying to make. And it is for each one of us, again, in our choices, right? But I am so grateful, even if I don't ever, right, meet my goals, if I never achieve anything that are the absolute priorities in my life. I am grateful for where I'm at right this moment. I am grateful for the roof over my head, right? I'm grateful for the food. I'm grateful for my laptop and my desktop. I'm grateful for my trips that somehow miraculously always gets to happen in September. I'm hoping to go away for 3 weeks this year, right? I'm really I don't even work, right? But we're already saving for that trip, and it's just a matter of, right, just making that movement. And you make that movement, and I believe that someone or something will come up behind you and, like a breath of wind, help you along, push you forward. And again, what I was saying about change, right? It's just a matter of being willing to move with that, to possibly say yes to an opportunity. Sometimes it's just applying yourself to your goals and to your dreams and those things that you want in your life, right? I am so grateful for these kind of understandings. Why? Because I feel like I am partnering with myself, and whatever I can do for myself, I'm doing for those other parts of me too. And that makes me happy, right? I think probably the intent for me was to be a codependent on myself, and my other selves to be dependent on me. That's what partnership is, right? That is what partnership is. And I'm grateful for these kind of understandings, right? And it is in that vocal appreciation, like in the past couple of days, I talked about, some of the thought leaders out there that I appreciate, that I am grateful that I've been able to resonate with their ideas and resonate with their content, right? And it is sometimes, right, appreciated. You give what you get. But I also know through my own experience that when you show that appreciation, when sometimes when you don't rub people well, because, right, lots of us, all of us, there are people that, as much as we'd like to get along with them, as much as we'd like to understand them, as much as we'd like to move with them, just for whatever reason, we just cannot find that connection with them, right? And then we find ourselves, you know, not appreciating the people that we do have in our lives. And the thing is, with that information that we vocalize, sometimes in that what we don't rub well with, sometimes in what they call jealousy and resentment, and they know they can't come at you because you're not going to take it, right? Or for whatever reason that they're not going to come at you, that they'll try and take out what you do appreciate, what you do love, what you do care for. And it's just out of spitefulness, right? But it's only out of that idea that, they just don't have that understanding that it takes all kinds to make the world, right? That understanding that, kindness matters, that understanding of acceptance. And for whatever reason, that I was gifted these understandings in my life. I am grateful. I am super grateful, right? That I'm not going to be stepping into those potholes ever again, right? Well, I probably will, because lots of times we get distracted, don't we? Okay, you guys. Hannah, oh my goodness. The days I keep my gratitude higher, than my expectations, I have really good days. When I make myself available for good things, right? And like you, Hannah, I try and, right, I call them hopes and dreams, and I avoid calling them expectations, right? But as people, we can't help but have expectations for ourselves, right? And I think to a point, it has to be a little bit that way. That expectation that we're going to live by these values, and no matter what, no matter who triggers us, no matter who makes us feel bad about ourselves, right? That we're not going to give that tit for tat. And for myself, those are the kind of expectations I would like to have for myself. But I am constantly reminded, right, that I am only human. And those course corrections will happen. And I am grateful for those course corrections. I'm going to even say that. They're not fun. Course corrections are not fun. But if I can keep making that movement, keep leaving myself open, be willing to be course corrected, right? With little baby steps, that change is going to happen, right? And it starts just as much, right? Tolerance for myself, tolerance for what I don't know yet, and not be frustrated by that. And you know what? I can have good days by understanding that too. And even better days if that trigger happens and I handle it properly. I don't let it impact me in a way that it does ruin my whole day. And then I am happy for that. And I put the card away already. Grateful for that. Hannah, it's so nice to see you here. It's amazing. Oh, awesome, Eugene. The days I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, I have really good days. I really like that, Hannah. I really like that. You know what? I might apply that to my day tomorrow and see what comes of that, right? See what comes of that. Tomorrow, I just might have a good day. The house is clean, right? Everything is listed. All that suntan lotion I finally got rid of. 100 messages I answered. And some of those 100 messages were messages within the messages, in just keeping good tabs and communication with the people who were interested in what I was trying to move along. But it's all gone now. I don't have to deal. Over 1,000 views on some bottles of suntan lotion. It was crazy town, but it was fun. It was challenging, and I got my vitamins out of the deal. Right? You get what you give. You guys, you have a great night. I film. What is that? I can't read. Let me use this to see if that helps. Um, I film Sea Train at Emporia, Virginia. Is that where you're from, Eugene? Is from Virginia? They have crystals in Virginia. I'm trying to think what they have. I think they have, what's the blue stone? My crystals. This one. What's this one? I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Antoro. Mount Antoro is famous for this rock. I can't remember what it is. Okay, you guys, I'm out of here. I'm tired. I'm done with my day. right? I'm going to have my cup of coffee, going to have my bath, get in my pajamas, and we're going to call it a night, right? And grateful that I got what I had to get done today. Done. Makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I've had a productive and good day. Okay, you guys. Freeman, Virginia, Brunswick County. Oh my god, slow country. Wow, I'm gonna Google that and see where that is, and I'll do a street view and take a look. Okay, you guys. See you tomorrow.